Australian officials have scuppered a Chinese embassy plan to host a concert in the heart of Parliament House to commemorate the 80th anniversary of Japan's defeat in World War II. It comes as former Foreign Minister Bob Carr continues to defend his decision to travel to Beijing for commemorations marking the event. Foreign Affairs reporter Stephen Jedgetts joins me now from Parliament House in Canberra. A very good morning to you, Stephen. What was this event planned for at Parliament House, and why did officials in Australia decide to pull the plug?
Well, Kath, this was one of really countless events that we've seen around the globe commemorating the victory of the Allies and China over Japan. Now, as we've been seeing for the last couple of days, the amount of resources and effort that China has poured into this globally is really quite astonishing. Not just this vast and lavish military parade in Beijing, but also a host of other events that their embassies have held around the world, all trying to frame China not just rightly as the victim of fascist aggression, but also as a real bulwark of the new and emerging international order. Now, one of those events that was planned was going to be held right here in Parliament House, in the heart of the building at the Great Hall of the People. Invitations went out a few weeks ago to basically say, come along, that there would be a concert held at Parliament House to mark this event. But then just a few days before the event was due to be held, officials here in Canberra, at the Department of Parliamentary Services, seemed to get cold feet, probably because of some of the optics around this. A lot of people in Australia, while sympathising with Chinese attitudes towards the depredations they suffered in World War II, are really uneasy about how they're now using the event to do things like buttress their claim over Taiwan, and of course the optics of that extraordinary military parade yesterday with Xi Jinping hosting not only Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un, but also a host of other authoritarian leaders and trying to show off Chinese military strength. So officials were then in a bit of a pickle. In the end, they decided they had no choice but to cancel the event. That forced the Chinese embassy to effectively relocate to the embassy grounds itself down the road. I guess what this whole episode demonstrates, Catherine, is just the enormous sensitivities that still surround China's relationship, even when you're talking about events from 80 years ago. Australia's not blind to the way that China's trying to harness this event for propaganda purposes. And even if there is a level of sympathy, as I said, about what did happen to China, where millions of people did die because of wartime atrocities, Australian officials want to keep a bit of distance to what the Chinese authorities are trying to do to that now.
And Stephen, speaking of sensitivities, there is still debate about former premiers Dan Andrews and Bob Carr and their decision to go to Beijing for these commemorations. What's the latest?
Yeah, that's right. Both Bob Carr and Dan Andrews have come under pretty heavy fire for their decision to go to Beijing. Now, it is worth noting out, Dan Andrews did attend the parade, and as we've been reporting, posed with some of those leaders, or many of those leaders, including Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping and the Korea's dictator Kim Jong-un. But of course, Bob Carr, although he did go to Beijing to attend some of these broader events, did not go to the military parade itself. Now, last night, Bob Carr was asked why he decided to do that. He basically defended his decision, saying it's important to take the opportunity to engage not just with the Chinese government, but also with other senior officials who were taking the opportunity to get to Beijing. And he said that although he would not himself have joined that photo that Dan Andrews did, he wasn't going to directly criticise the former Victorian Premier for making that decision, saying he was big and old enough to look after himself. Let's take a listen to what Bob Carr had to say, speaking to 7:30 last night.
Do you think that I was excited by the idea of watching weapons from a stand? I wasn't. I came here because the ambassador promised to deliver meetings with Chinese think tanks where I could talk about the problems of peace. Dan Andrews can speak for himself. He's someone who's been battered to death by media hostility in his own state and gone on to win big majorities when he's put his case to the Victorian people. He can defend himself.
Now, of course, I think the coalition's going to continue to pressure Labor over this. Both of these officials, of course, or former premiers, are no longer official government representatives. They're private citizens. The government has no capacity to force them to either attend or not attend anything. But the coalition has been arguing that the Prime Minister should forcefully condemn their decision, perhaps particularly Dan Andrews' decision to attend this parade and pose with those leaders. So far, the government's response has been muted. You get the clear sense that it doesn't love the decision that the former premiers have made, but it doesn't necessarily want to pick a public fight with them either.